Hello and welcome to my channel TFF. I've been making videos about the introduction to philosophy, so this is just one of many videos in that series. You should look at the link in the description below for the whole list of videos that I have made so far for this course and what I'm planning to do in the future. In the previous video I started talking about argumentation as part of philosophical or critical thinking. So in this video I'm going to be talking about formulating your own argument. So far I have mostly talked about how you can fail at making a proper argument. I will return to that later when discussing the assessment of arguments in more depth. Before getting into that though, I want to make some preliminary notes about argumentation. You can think of this as preparing before making your own case. First of all, there is probably a reason for the discussion, for making the argument in the first place. This could be some kind of a disagreement between yourself and some other person or people, perhaps your friends or perhaps your co-workers or whoever. Or perhaps you have come up with an idea that may be completely new, although that is pretty unlikely. Or at least it may be one that the others that you are communicating with may not have heard of previously. In cases like these, you may want to present a case for your idea. Perhaps the others will accept it or find flaws in your thinking. Both of these are actually desirable outcomes because they advance knowledge. It could also be the case that you want to argue against an opinion or even a theory you have been presented with. And so you will be constructing a counter-argument. It is still a form of argument and should be constructed just like an argument for an opinion. So even if it's against an opinion, it's still an argument. Those two are kind of like the same thing in that sense. There may be minor differences, but the only significant difference is that a counter-argument does not have to show that some positive claim is true or plausible. It needs only to show that the argument for a positive claim fails. This is due to a principle known as the burden of proof. The one making the positive claim is the one who needs to show that the view is at least plausible. They cannot just demand their view to be accepted unless proven false. If you are dealing with a disagreement as opposed to your own new idea, you need to make sure you understand what the disagreement is really about. So locate the common ground you have with your interlocutor, the person you are discussing with, so you know what you can agree on. Then see what is actually causing the disagreement. As I mentioned in a previous video about conceptual analysis, a method of philosophy, it could be just a case of different interpretations of terms. So make sure that is not the case here. Make sure you understand the other views or theories as well as possible before trying to argue against them. Because all communication requires interpretation, some suggestions have been made for how you should try to interpret others. The principle of charity, for example, suggests that you interpret every statement as if they had been made by a perfectly rational person. The idea is to avoid accusing the person of committing logical or other fallacies, of being irrational, if it is possible to interpret them in any other way. I would like to suggest my own principle of benevolence as well, which adds to the previous, the principle of charity, that one should attempt to interpret others also as if they were good, ethical people, instead of too easily assuming them of being liars or otherwise bad people. Why assume malice when ignorance and stupidity sufficiently explain a person's behavior? Sometimes, of course, it is difficult to choose whether to judge a person to be irrational, ignorant, or evil, but the idea is to try and see them in the best possible way, whichever that may be. That's up to you. This way, you will be dealing with the strongest forms of their arguments. If you can still defeat those arguments with your own counter-arguments, you will know that you would have defeated weaker forms of those arguments as well. Now you are ready to start your own argumentation. In this following section, I have benefited significantly from a book by Leena Kurki and Tuukka Tomperi. You can see it here. When you make your own case, you should try to be concise, unlike me. Give a simple explanation of your opinion and why you think it is the right way to think about the subject. Clarify all the concepts that you require and be precise in their use. If you appeal to expert opinions or other sources, make sure to apply proper source criticism first, to make sure your sources are credible and in general they are good for the purpose that they are being used for. If your argumentation is long and complicated, it may be a good idea to first present the structure of your argument. You can be more or less formal in explaining all the premises of your argument and how they come together to support your conclusion. Once everyone understands how you plan to make your case, it is easier for them to follow your argument. Think of it as the list of contents for a book. When you start reading an academic book, you should first look at the general structure of the book to help you understand how its contents are related to each other. When showing how your argument is connected to the general discussion, you need to contextualize it. For example, are you approaching the subject from a legal or an ethical point of view? Or perhaps you are talking about metaphysics. You need to contextualize what you are talking about. Of course, if you are referring to theories or people, you have to present them in their correct contexts. Your explanation of the subject in question has to be adequate so that your audience will understand what you are talking about and how your argument relates to things more generally. You must understand and present the relevant phenomena accurately and correctly. You can use analogies or comparisons to other things your audience is more familiar with But make sure to not make any false analogies. You may also use examples which may be factual, real-life examples, or hypothetical examples that are fictional but could be true. If you use anecdotes, it will not be taken seriously by most people who want scientific or otherwise strong evidence. A case study is much better, as you can provide documentation that others can then verify for themselves. It can be just a reference to an actual historical event, for example. But if you mean to make a case based on it, you need to know the case then fairly well. If you quantify what you are talking about, such as describing the frequency of a phenomenon in words like often or almost never or frequently, or numbers like twice a year or anything like that, be sure to not exaggerate. If possible, use again credible sources such as scientific data. Statistics from trustworthy organizations regarding several important issues may be found freely online these days, so you might be able to use those. You have to know how to use and interpret such data, though. I have left what I think is probably the most important piece of advice last. When you construct your argument, especially if you are doing so in writing, use your knowledge of opposing views and arguments and already counter them in your own presentation. This of course means that you should look into what others have thought about the subject in the past before trying to make your own case. Countering opposing views may be more difficult to do in an oral debate, but it may be even more impressive in such a situation, as you are able to show and anticipate contrary arguments and viewpoints. It shows the audience that you know what you are talking about and are not just one of those many empty-headed people who form strong opinions quickly without really knowing much about the subject. In the next video, I will make some points about rhetoric and logic. See you then.